It's the most important election in a generation, so we're putting the questions you want answered to the politicians vying to lead the nation for the next 3 years. Kia ora everyone and welcome into the third of our New Zealand Herald virtual town halls, where tonight we're joined by Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson. We're getting your answers on everything from COVID-19 and border security to the economic slump it's brought with it, as well as jobs, education, housing, healthcare, and of course the environment. Join in the comments section. We'll put your questions to Marama Davidson herself. It's your vote. This is about getting your questions answered at New Zealand's home of election 2020. Marama Davidson from the Greens, thanks so much for coming in and joining us tonight.
Thank you. Well, it's an honour.
Oh my goodness, an honour. That's the biggest compliment we've had. David Seymour was still on his phone when we started yesterday, so we're already off to a great start.
I'm fully focused in here.
First up, give me your 60-second pitch about why people should vote Greens.
We know that people want us to hand to our generations after us a stable climate, a thriving environment where our oceans, our rivers and our soil is healthy, and a country that is taking care of each other, making sure everyone can live in dignity. And that's what the priorities have always been for the Green Party. We are in danger of one party having all the power. And I know that the people of our country understand that we need a representative government. Labor needs the Greens to make sure that we ensure stronger action for our climate, for our environment and for our people, and I'm asking for the party vote for the Green Party.
I wonder how aware these people are that think that we need a coalition government, because I'll talk you through those poll results that we just heard, right?
Sure.
6% at this point. Are you in trouble? And the reason I ask this is because in 2017 you had an 8% poll in the same poll leading up to the election, and you got in at 6.3.
That's right.
On these numbers, if the same match happened, you wouldn't be in Parliament.
Absolutely, and we are certainly aware of how much work we have got to do, being very clear that it is the Greens strong in government that again is going to make sure we take the actions that we need to take to meet the challenges at the scale we need to meet them at. And again, you know, we are not resting on our laurels at all. We're very clear that we've got to work hard for every single vote to, you know, have that strong heart, green heart in a Labor government.
What's gone wrong then?
Oh, again, I think we've got to be quite pleased and relieved that through this whole term we're the only party that has stayed quite stable out of all of the government parties. You've seen other parties sort of dip and rise all over the show, and I think what I'm hearing on the ground is people do know that it is the Greens that want to do the most transformational changes. But again, we've got work to do. We've got to make sure people understand that a strong green heart is needed in the next term of government.
One person that is out there that's vote could matter more than most is the Prime Minister, and she could quite easily suggest that her voters give their votes in Auckland Central to Chloe Swarbrick, and that would ensure, regardless of whether maybe you went down to 4% or whatever, you would be back. Why hasn't she done it?
Well, you'll have to ask her that, William, you know that, I bet. But again, look, Chloe has been very clear that she is winning the old-fashioned way. She wants to run a campaign on the merits of her incredible grassroots, her incredible organisation, and my goodness, she has run a campaign that is so magnificent. From today, she had Drags for Democracy, for example. She's had comedy shows. She's had people picking up rubbish all across Auckland City. She's run an incredible campaign. She's very clear she wants to do it on its merits. No one owns that electorate. That's for the voters to decide.
I wonder, though, if you feel a little bit like you might have been left high and dry by the Prime Minister. And the reason I'll say this is because we had a piece, obviously, in the paper in the last day or so by Simon Wilson, who said her 48th spot, Helen White, this is, who's running in Auckland, on the Labour list, almost guarantees she'll be an MP, unless they drop below 40%. And they're way up, you know, in the mid-40s, right? So does this mean that the Prime Minister doesn't want you there?
Look, all political parties have to campaign for their own parties, and I've expected that this whole time. I've never relied on any other political parties getting us into Parliament. We've just got to get out and work hard for every single vote, and the Greens understand that challenge.
Do you feel slightly betrayed, though? If you
No, I don't.
If you look at what happens on the right, with ACT and the National Party, Judith Collins has instantly said, and I know there's a heritage there with Epsom, right, go there. The Prime Minister could do this, and she could reward her coalition partners over this 3-year period. She's chosen not to.
What people expect of the Greens is quite different to what they expect of the National Party. People almost expect the National Party to play dirty politics, and we're seeing that to this day. People understand the Greens have a different principle and have a different approach to democracy. We want it to be upfront and transparent, and in the long term, that is what we have on our side. So again, we are fully committed to working hard on our merits for every single vote.
I wonder though, because you're obviously a big fan of the mixed sort of proportional parliament, it'd be more representative if the Prime Minister did encourage. Should she not just encourage Auckland voters to do that?
I think that again, I think that is absolutely for every individual party to do that work. And we've never...
You'd be appreciative if she did?
Oh, actually, I've been really, really clear, and the Greens are really, really clear. We are campaigning on our priority issues. We are campaigning on an umbrella of justice for Te Tiriti while we take the strongest climate action, and we've shown in government already, we've taken the strongest action on climate in 3 decades because of the Green Party, ending new offshore oil and gas, getting the climate change back into the Resources Management Act, and the zero carbon legislation. So we are clear that we want to campaign on our achievements, our successes, and our priorities for the planet and people.
This is kind of the last question on the side problem. We're moving into the proof of performance section, which we do for every party that's had a say in government in the last 3 years. I wonder if you or Winston Peters might have something in common in this particular instance, more so than maybe you've had in the last 3 years. Do you in any way regret going with Labour or being that close to this government as opposed to, a very traditional confidence in supply?
Not at all, not at all. And so we were in a confidence in supply. And for the first term, for a smaller party in government, it was our members who confirmed that, decided that. And I think that was right. I think, again, this is why you are seeing the Greens right from the start of the term sort of holding steady around 5 and actually increasing up a little in the recent weeks, 6, 7. And
because
I think
you distance yourself.
Because of our political independence, being able to show that we have both got stuff done, and we are pushing to go further and faster to meet those challenges at the scale they need to be met.
And you spoke about getting stuff done. I wonder if you give yourself a pass or fail in these first 3 years. If we look at the really core policies that I suppose mattered, there were hallmark policies around housing, child poverty, for example.
So we had our agreement to form a government, it's called our Confidence and Supply Agreement with Labour. We have either achieved and or properly started on every single one of those agreements. So that's an incredible achievement. But actually, we also achieved outside of that confidence and supply agreement. So it is because of the Greens that we saw an increase in benefit payments across the board, ending the immoral sanction against solo parents who don't name the father, and indexing, sort of tagging benefit increases to wages. So those are some things that would not have happened without the Greens pushing for the expert advisory work of the welfare group. And again, so we've got so many achievements that we have pushed through, but we have just started, and we know that there's more to do. We've got to go further and faster.
So you accept some failings though around, for example, housing?
For example, again, this government has built the highest number of public houses than any government since the 1970s. Because of the Greens, we were able to support and push through improved rights for people who rent, limiting rent increases to once per year, banning letting fees, banning bidding. And you're right, the Greens have been very clear in our visions that we must prioritise public and affordable and healthy housing. And that's our point of difference, and that's where we would go further and faster.
In terms of the original targets, it would take 400 years on those Kiwi Build targets. I know that's not your policy.
Really not our targets.
No, definitely not. But are you kind of disappointed that you signed up to a bigger party that didn't deliver on that? Because welfare is a really important policy of yours.
Yes, and so while I'm, proud that because of the Greens we were able to get some gains in improving our income support system, we really needed to see a proper increase to the lowest incomes in the lowest income households, and that has not happened. That's why we announced that we would bring in a guaranteed minimum income of $325. That's the starting minimum rate. That would immediately bring families above the poverty line. So those are the areas where we will push further and faster in the next term.
Let's talk about the potential that you would be in government and you would be with Labour. There's going to be a lot of portfolios up for grabs. If you look at what New Zealand First had there, right? And one of the big
they're
issues
all up for grabs in
well,
theory.
this is true. This is true. One of the key ones for you, I suppose, is children. And I wonder if that is. Are there policies that you'd have in mind for yourself? And if you look at the criticism from like Andrew Beecroft, the Children's Commissioner last year, saying no way has this government done enough work on child poverty, is that something you want? What are the policies what are the portfolios that you guys are looking for?
It's a fair question. So we've been really clear with voters, with people, what our top election priorities are. And so if you just let me quickly run through our poverty action plan, our clean energy plan, our homes for all plan, our cleaner farming plan, our protecting oceans plan, and our cleaner transport plan. Now, so we're saying we want to achieve work in the next term of government aligned with all of those top priorities for us.
So potentially all of those portfolios up for grabs.
So our members will decide, once we see what vote we've got, what are the sorts of portfolios or roles, let's say roles, that are needed to progress that work. So it's more about the work that we need to do as opposed to just singling out individual portfolios.
But you'd come within Cabinet this time and do...
And I can be honest when I say that is definitely up to our members, and I, as the co-leader, can't preempt that, but I am trying to sort of make sure that I'm being as upfront as I can about the areas and the work program that we would need to urgently get started on.
So much talk of James Shaw being potential Deputy PM, why not you?
There has been talk of both of us, and again, the status alone of Deputy PM is not enough. It's got to be about how can we achieve our work program, how can we get climate action, biodiversity protection, and everyone supported
big
enough.
Voice at the table though, right?
So,
you could have that big voice at the table. Do you want it?
The party has to decide that, and I am not trying to sort of not answer the question because I'm really proud.
You must want it though, right? Because you want to get the most done. So if it was on offer,
people know that I, and the Greens in particular, have never been about wanting something for the case of having power.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting your policies done, if you get to sit in the deputy seat, wow, you get a voice, right?
And I know you and perhaps others would like to sort of nail an answer from me, but I simply cannot give one because that is definitely for the members to decide.
But you'd accept it if the members decided yes.
It's up to the members. Everything is on the table, so nothing's off the table.
So you'd accept it if they said yes?
No, I'm not even going to be able to answer that.
Let's talk about COVID-19. Do you think perhaps maybe in the early days and with this recent wave, the government was a little bit naive with its handling of COVID-19?
Oh, are you kidding? Gosh, I'm so proud that our beautiful Aotearoa has done so well, that when we look around the world, and I feel so much aroha for the people in America, the people in the UK, many other Northern European countries. I feel so aroha for them because it is them who are bearing the impact of leaders who did not take strong and early action like we did. So I'm really grateful for that. Again,
failures at the border, the testing, that kind of stuff, that's a disappointment?
Again, we can always improve, and we must absolutely keep our borders as safe as we can, and we definitely have to improve our security, our testing. We've done so well though, we really have.
Adoption of technology, though, is perhaps one of the examples that we hear about all the time, right? Sam Morgan had the COVID card and this kind of stuff. A lot of people that seem to be in the tech sector wanting to help the government seem to keep saying we don't get responses, we don't get talk back from the Ministry of Health. Is that kind of a concern? Because it seems like we're moving on to a new time now, right? Where governments don't even want lockdowns now because of the economic crisis. Are you somewhat disappointed when you hear someone like Sam Morgan coming out and saying, we tried to talk to them about the COVID card, they won't help with that, the app itself?
I'd have to dispute that. I don't know for absolute certainty that there has been no response from those ministries. While I'm not in cabinet, and you know, I don't want to sit here and confirm Sam's words just because he said them, and I think that the ministries and the ministers would probably dispute that there has been no communication. But there is a role for so many different parts of our talent to help, and tech will absolutely always be a big part of our innovation, and we should be proud of that. And I think that has to be part of the conversation, but I don't want us to think that that's the silver bullet either.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you heard about that second wave, how disappointed were you?
I'm confused about the different waves.
The border breach that saw Auckland go into lockdown again.
Yeah, look, again, I don't know if I expected us to not have, to have everything perfect, and we've just got to be upfront and maintain that we are doing everything we can to improve.
Do you see any possibility of this idea that MIQ would move into NZDF bases like Winston Peters says is a good idea?
I certainly, and I've just had a little bit of a think about this, I certainly have seen the failures overseas when we go into private security.
That's a no on the Act national policy?
Yeah, I think that's I've seen that cause quite a bit of chaos.
What about the NZDF though? Because you have seen in Whangaparoa there was never a problem when that initial repatriation flight came.
Yeah, the Greens have always been quite clear that our Defence Forces can play some really good humanitarian and environmental protection roles and have, including overseas. And so we're totally open to that conversation.
Righto, okay. Let's talk about the economy. Chris Anthony asks, in a time of economic recession, how does taking money out of the economy and putting it into the government coffers via increased taxes help the economy grow and recover? I think we know what he's talking about.
Well, if we think about what the government does with our shared resources, it's about making sure that we have got strong public services, strong public housing. How about water infrastructure that works for all of us, that stops just polluting our beautiful Waitemata harbour out there? How about we've got good public transport, affordable and regular for people? How about our school buildings are not mouldy and have got holes in them? Yeah, we'll get to that. How about our hospitals are functioning and don't have mould and poo running down the walls? These are all the things that all of us rely on, including private businesses and big corporations who have relied on our education system, our roads and transport systems, our health system to keep their workers healthy. This is how we make sure that our livelihoods...
So you're arguing the Keynesian economic model, are you, that when the private sector shrinks, the government sector should put more money in to try and boot the economy on?
And again, so the guaranteed minimum income that we've been proposing, again, is how when lower income and even middle income households have more cash, where do they go? They go immediately to their local businesses, their local neighbourhood services. If that's not a community stimulus program, then I don't know what is.
I think some people might dispute that. They might say they go to Countdown or potentially pack and
still
that
local
kind of
workers,
thing.
Still local workers.
Sure, okay.
Absolutely.
Lara Flavel, I do apologise, asked, please explain in detail, why you believe tax is love.
I think I've just outlined quite a lot of that. So for decades, successive governments have neglected public services, and we're all paying for that now. We are seeing billions of dollars of water infrastructure improvement needed because of that underfunding. We have billions of dollars worth of school buildings and infrastructure to fix up because of that underfunding and the lack of revenue coming into government. If we do not increase our revenue to be able to address the big issues of climate action, biodiversity degradation, and making sure we resolve inequality, things are going to get worse. There is no way that all of the other political parties can profess to the plans that they are putting up without increasing revenue, and that is what we must do.
I wonder if it's bad that the most talked about policy of the Greens is an economic wealth tax as opposed to an environmental policy.
It's great because it's connected to protecting our environment. We cannot start to take strong action on helping our rivers revive. I mean, we live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but having a majority of our rivers unable to be swum in, let alone drunk from. That's an absolute immoral shame, and we need government to be able to help local governments and not rely on their rates to be able to bring and restore our water, our soil, our harbours. So, you know, I'm so pleased that we've finally got wealth tax right in the middle of the political discussion.
Will Wilson asks, where do the Greens stand on the minimum working man, I think it might be the typo there, paying 60+% for rent?
The minimum working...
I think what they're saying, minimum working, paying 60% of their wages on rent.
It's not called, it is creating further hardship. At the moment, we tax people who earn and not people who own. And this is why the Greens have been very strong and clear about the need for a wealth tax. So at the moment, people who earn are being, their income is being swallowed up. It's sometimes more than 60%, even for people who work. So we have our wages have the wages for the lowest wages have not kept up with the cost of living. This is why the Greens have a plan to focus on prioritise public housing, build a non-profit rental sector that would help that average working man, say, to not have to pay 60%. I want to get things down to, say, 30 or 40% at the most. You talked about the wealth tax then. Let's talk about that. 1% for over $1 million. Net? Yeah, net, right. So individual. And an individual, fair enough. So, although Auckland, and with the house prices in Auckland, it's probably, you know, there'll be probably quite a few people subject to that. Only 6% of the country, in fact.
Okay. Yeah. If you could be the queen maker, if you will, in this, why not set that as a line in the sand and say we want it done? Because the Prime Minister ruled out capital gains tax, right? She said it will not happen. So why don't you just go into that room and say this is what we want and we're not moving if you don't do it? Our plea and working hard to get more party votes for the Green Party is what will help us do that, is what will help us say we have the strongest mandate possible to be able to put across all of our priorities and as close as we can to a version of the plans that we have put up. And so right now, we are not in a position to set bottom lines. We are not. But what we are asking is if people really want to see us address inequality, make sure everyone has a fair go, then we need the party vote so we can go to the negotiation table in a strong position. I wonder though, if you're not willing to set bottom lines, you see what's happened in the past 3 years where you've got situations where New Zealand First has really dominated in many sectors. Like, for example, the idea you had last time around the capital gains tax. Like, if you don't set a bottom line, do they not sort of, maybe like what we're seeing in Auckland with the Prime Minister not, you know, asking her voters to go for Chloe, they see you as a pushover, don't they? No, I think people, and this again, if I can just refer to the ongoing 3 years of polling, which has held us steady, I think there's a real clear acknowledgement and affirmation that it is the Greens who will push for more people to be looked after, for our environment to be looked after, and for our climate to be looked after. And so, again, we're being very upfront, top priorities, and it is our members, once we have the votes in, who will work that out. Now, that is, I cannot preempt how and what we take to the negotiation table, but right now for the campaign, top priorities. Are you going to step it up a little bit though? Because if I look at what happened in the last 3 years, right, like the no duty on bottled water, for example, the Winston Peters, if we listen to those tapes, essentially slowing cameras being put on fishing vessels, the 620,000 square kilometre Kermadec sanctuary. This is a man who's very effective at stopping things, and I wonder if you know, put the heat under your negotiations, maybe you'd get more of what you wanted too. And this is why the voters of our beautiful country have it in their hands to make sure that we have a strong Green Labour government. I'm not getting an answer on that one, am I? Right, okay. Green Labour government, so that we don't have that chaos, that handbrake to taking the action that our country deserves us to take. We've just seen a 12.2% drop in GDP. What can you do right now to turn this economy around? Because we're dropping faster than some of our contemporaries. Again, there are so many things. Firstly, I want to keep coming back to a guaranteed minimum income as a way of reviving local businesses, community and neighbourhood enterprises. But if I can also say, we're proposing job creation across all of those election plans, housing,
energy, transport, agricultural farming, restorative agriculture, for example, and many more.
Yeah.
And we're also really staunch about the fact that focusing just on the GDP was the problem in the first place for not taking into account the other indicators of complete well-being, which was how are we doing on reducing our climate emissions, how are we doing on protecting our fresh water, how are we doing to making sure everyone has enough to live with. Those are also the indicators that we must take into account.
In terms of support, one of the things that you could do that would help a lot of people at the moment that are losing their jobs is asking to extend that October 30 deadline on the COVID-19 income relief payment, which is roughly $500 a week for people who get laid off. Do you want that done?
We want the social support system to be increased for everyone, not just for COVID-19 redundancy payments. And that, can I just pause us there? The fact that COVID-19 redundancy payment, which we absolutely support, you know, the worst.
Do you
the
support
worst
extending
thing,
it though?
I want to see everyone supported, not just the people. You know, before COVID came along, we had a whole lot of people who deserved the support.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to see is that support immediately increase for everyone. And this is why the Greens have also been very clear that increase for the COVID-19 payments showed just how meagre the current income support rates really are.
But you don't want to extend that. I mean, there's a lot of people losing their jobs.
I do want to extend support. We wanted, for example, to extend the winter energy payment. People are going to lose that extra income. So yes, there is more support that we must provide.
Going back to the CGT for just a minute, James Shaw tabled the idea that a government might not deserve to be re-elected if it doesn't implement a CGT. Do the Greens deserve to be re-elected?
Yes, we do. And that's why we are proposing a wealth tax to finally in this country start taxing people who own and not just people who earn, which also impacts on people who earn the least in this country and are working their butts off as well.
Going back to the Economy Act, Party leader David Seymour wants to lift the ban on new oil and gas exploration. He says that it's better for us to extract our own oil and gas than it is to burn overseas coal. What do you say to him on that?
Yeah, no, that is an excuse, a dangerous one, that will not put us on a path to reduce our emissions at the rate we need to reduce them to. And the whole world needs to do this in tandem.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing, particularly from the most polluting industries, the excuse that they want to be used as a transition energy. The biggest jobs are in solar energy, for example. There are more jobs created in clean energy than there are in most other industries.
And you've got a huge part of solar energy, actually.
And our clean energy and our homes
policies.
for all
Yeah,
plan.
you want 100% of new public housing projects.
All appropriate public housing.
All appropriate public housing projects. The one thing that a lot of people bring up, not just David Seymour though, is the fact that solar needs the sun to shine. And how do you deal with surge electricity demand when the sun's shining, when the sun's not shining at night? That's
why we absolutely need to include storage and energy storage. So it's solar and batteries that we need to be looking at. And yes,
it's very cost prohibitive though, Marama.
Well,
if you look at what's
that's why, you know, when we say things are cost prohibitive, we've got everything we need. It just is not shared evenly in this country. Government can play a massive role to support more families to have cheaper energy and cleaner energy, reducing their power bills, taking care of our footprint on the earth. That's a win-win-win-win-win. And we do have enough. We need to increase our revenue so the government can help to lead us in the direction of 100% clean energy by 2030. And we have to set those goals.
Why not bring some of that electricity that's online down in Southland from Tiwai Point into the grid? There are jobs down. Well, why not? You surely mustn't support holding up that business down there, do you? What
we do support is a just transition for the workers on the ground.
Sure.
For the workers on the ground. Now, the Tiwai has actually received incredible subsidies over many years, and the writing was on the wall a long time ago that they were in trouble.
Yeah.
they actually could have upheld a bit more of their responsibility in a just transition. However, what the
Would
Greens...
you just let it shut down though? Would that be...
That wouldn't perhaps be a just transition. So
work
there
on
is
people with the jobs,
Yeah.
but would you let Tiwai Point shut down? Because obviously it's a big polluter and it uses an enormous amount of energy.
I think I want to be open to the conversations about how we could use that to assist towards clean energy, towards local production and manufacture of energy. And again, what I don't want to see though is, Tiwai not the company, not the people, not the workers, but Tiwai also needs to take responsibility to clean its mess up as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that the government should be subsidising that. But what I do want to see is a solid conversation. I don't have all the answers, I'm going to be honest about that, but I want to see a conversation of how we could utilise that in a way that is sustainable and definitely a just transition for workers and families on the ground.
So you wouldn't support a government that you
No, I'm
were
not
in
saying that at all.
giving more
Not
money to
saying-
Tiwai?
It depends what it's used for. I'm not closed off to that at all. I would like to. We must see a just transition.
To keep the plant running, would you in a government that you're in give money to Tiwai Point to keep that plant running, or would you give it to them to transition those workers into new work?
We've got to transition workers across the whole country, and again, so I'll be open to that conversation.
The Green Party wouldn't put money behind the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter though as a business.
Again, it's about just transition for the workers, but towards cleaner energy, and I'm not going to make a decision on that right now.
Okay, righto. Aaron Allen has suggested on Facebook taxing churches. Do you support that idea?
Oh, yeah, that's come up a few times over the years. I'm just trying to think. And I support charitable organisations having some exemptions, but I think, we just need to look at what the purposes of those exemptions are.
Though, right?
Yeah, we are. Oh gosh, I'm thinking about my highly Catholicised north in Hokianga.
Sure.
In Hokianga and the fusion, I'm not, and while I'm not religious myself or a churchgoer myself, I don't know if I'm qualified to sort of make that discussion and give it any decent answer.
Someone's asking what you say to people in Taranaki, West Coast, Southland who will lose their jobs as a result of mining and gas going away.
Again, and the government has already started work, but we must have a just transition. It's absolutely true. Again, solar energy, building houses, green infrastructure. We have to make sure that it is not the workers on the ground who are bearing the brunt of climate change. Now, it's not.
All
it's
of that
not
stuff
policies.
would take retraining, right? People would lose
And
their
we
jobs
must
and
do
they'd
that.
have to retrain.
And we must do that and provide for a decent income while people are retraining.
It's a hard ask to tell someone like a family of
I
four
know.
in Taranaki that you're going to go from a decent wage at 50,000 and you've got to retrain while you're raising kids though, right?
Yeah, a harder ask is the impacts of climate change, and if we do not take action now, that is going to bugger up our lowest income workers, our Indigenous communities, our women, our people with a disability.
So some people need to be sacrificed?
Some people need to be... No, I've said exactly the opposite, Will.
No, in terms of their jobs and in terms of their livelihoods in these oil and gas businesses?
No, we must provide a just transition. And again, we've got enough. There are people here, there are people with more than they will ever need, while we have got workers on the ground who are struggling and working several jobs just to not even make ends meet. And I want to see the wealth redistributed.
I guess my question is that the oil and gas has stopped now, right? But the just transition hasn't come.
Yeah.
So you got the oil and gas done, and that's great. But these people are now looking at where does my job go to next? And the just transition hasn't happened, but the oil and gas has.
And it has to. I'm on their side because it has to. And I think that all governments should be called to account, including the previous one that did nothing to face up to the reality of climate change and has left those workers now in a lurch when they should have started that just transition process properly, probably a decade ago.
As more taxes and that kind of thing come on to other industries, which might make them a little bit more less competitive, do you commit to actioning the just transition at the same time you action new taxes to prevent
as
them?
an example,
and why didn't it happen last time with oil and gas?
As an example, it is the Greens who are proposing to triple the funding support for industries to move away from dirty oil, gas and coal and to move towards cleaner energy.
What about the workers though?
Yeah, well again, it is And this is also why we need a decent social support, a decent safety net as well, as part of a just transition, as well as making sure we are fairly paying those on the lowest wages. And, legislating for guaranteed annual increases in minimum wage is another one of the Greens' proposals, again, to make sure we are helping workers and not just owners.
Let's move on. Relda Desiree Daly wants to know if a deal on ihumātao is a deal breaker for you.
Again, no bottom lines. We've been quite upfront that there are no bottom lines. However, I'm really proud of the kaitiaki at ihumātao who managed to call for truer tiriti justice, have managed to halt that development of a multinational corporation, and now we've got the conversation happening the way it should have years ago when National put that rule into place. We
know Winston Peters stopped it though, right? So presumably with the Labour and Green. That's the question. Then you tell me, did he stop it?
I wasn't at those conversations.
And you haven't seen the deal either, have you?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't at all. But what I have been doing, the minute that the kaitiaki and the mana whenua who are protecting ihumātao are not happy, we know they can snap their fingers and get thousands of people back to ihumātao. So the conversation is positive and constructive, and that is being worked on.
Are you not concerned about the legal precedent that might be set if a deal was done over ihumātao?
No, because we can come to a peaceful resolution that doesn't even go near any treaty settlements, but the leadership of ihumātao themselves have been quite clear that whenua has not been subject to any treaty settlement yet.
No.
So we can look at a way of a true partnership with the local mana whenua, with tainui, with government, local government. There is a peaceful resolution waiting to happen, and it is the leadership of the young, I have to say, particularly female rangatira and leadership of that place, who are ensuring that a positive discussion is happening.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Ryan Lorenko asks, could you please say Greens policy for migrants?
Oh gosh, well there's many. And
let's maybe tackle immigrants first and then refugee immigrants after that maybe.
And it's quite a broad question when they say what's the policy.
Do you want immigration to go down or up?
That is not for us where the focus is. We are not proposing any changes to the current immigration policy. So I can say that we are not proposing any changes. And that is because, again, we've got all that we need and more to make sure everyone is looked after in this country. But what we haven't done is set in place laws and rules to, for example, prioritise public housing for everyone. And
the Māori Party's got an idea that you put a halt on people coming in though, right, until you can house them.
That received some pretty wicked backlash. They had to backstep on that one. I'll tell you why. Because many Māori raised their voices and said, this is not the focus. When we focus as tangata whenua on the question of immigration, we are distracting away from the true causes, for example, of the housing crisis, which is selling off state homes, neglecting to tax owners instead of just income earners, and neglecting to prioritise public housing and affordable housing, we need to stay focused on the causes.
What about a government of 3 years that didn't build enough houses? That's probably a big one too.
Not good enough. I've been very clear about that. But not building enough public and affordable houses in particular.
Are you on the right track now with those houses, do you think? Do you think if you come back...
Yeah. We have
get rid of the targets, right?
We've built more public houses than any government since the 1970s. It's still not enough, Will, and that's why the Greens would commit to clearing the waiting list in 5 years for public housing.
Diana Irving wants to know if you would end 1080 drops.
No, so we don't propose. So if the goal is looking after our native species, our native habitats, our native plants and animals, we need all the tools in the toolbox. No one wants to encourage, no one likes poison, not a single person. And, we have also the Department of Conservation. Minister Eugenie Sage has boosted funding for trapping and pest work more than any government in 16 years, the biggest funding increase. And that includes
transition off 1080 then? You don't want poison?
Yeah, always been our policy to fund and research the science of alternatives. Absolutely, absolutely. It's also always been our policy to not drop over waterways and to only where it's hard to reach for boots on the ground.
Would you enable more hunters to go out there and do some of
We already have in areas, for example, our Jobs for Nature, $1.3 billion, thousands more jobs around the country, and all through this term we absolutely understand the value of trappers and hunters, and we've been continuing to do that. There are some places that are hard to reach
that's
and
what I was
dangerous.
going to ask off where I live on Aotearoa Island,
Right.
for example. There's a lot of people out there that have concerns that DOC makes the decision over where 1080 gets dropped and where hunters can get involved. Would you support an inquiry into a different way of figuring out?
Yeah, I would actually, because there's another angle to this, which is that, and this has been improving in some areas where DOC does absolutely need to work closer with mana whenua in the area, that the community and local hapua niwi actually do have a right to be self-determining in how they protect their forests, and that is the question that I think all of us agree with. I do think that we can improve the way DOC works, and there has been some improvement on that.
So you would advocate for more on the ground input
I think that is not the problem. I think DOC itself is very clear of the value of more on the ground, but I do think that we can see better health, full forest health for all of us to enjoy when we take a partnership sort of approach with local community, mana whenua and DOC.
Agriculture is the most polluting sector in the economy, right? It looks set to join the emissions trading scheme, but under what's been called a sweetheart deal that would see them pay just 5% of the total emissions from 2025, and it's because we understand that New Zealand First was in the government. Will you renegotiate it when you get back in there?
What we have said is that we'll review whether or not we've seen an effective reduction or effective decrease in emissions from agricultural farming. That's why in our farming plan we're working to a levy on synthetic fertiliser, chopping down our nitrates and pollutants.
I just wonder why the rest of the country should pay for farmers.
So
we've heard from the Prime Minister recently. She said it's the industry that's rebounding the fastest, as other people are losing jobs and stuff like that in COVID. Why should?
And this is something I've kept saying. When you have a look at leaders in all industries, including agriculture, my goodness, they are making incredible things happen. They absolutely understand the importance of their environment, their waters, their soil, and I am disappointed.
But why do they get to pay 5%? Why do they get to pay 5%?
So that's a just transition. That's what that basically comes back to, is the Greens have in our plan included support for farmers to move towards more sustainable methods of farming, as well as bringing down pollutants and the use of synthetic fertilisers, which is the reason behind intense farming. But again, it's about a just transition. If we're talking about taranaki workers, we're talking about the same. New Zealand government successively have unfortunately put a lot on farmers and have built up an industry without supporting farmers to move towards cleaner methods. Now, many farmers are doing that well ahead of government leadership anyway. Many are, and sometimes their voices are drowned out, I have to say. So the just transition is the reason for a later target, but also James Shaw has been quite clear that should and could be reviewed as well.
David Seymour said last night if the full ETS charge, for example, was levelled on someone like the Glenbrook steel mill, that'd be $50 million on a $600 million turnover and 1,400 people would be out of work. Then we go to China and buy steel, right?
Again. This is why there needs to be more support locally to help transition.
Shouldn't we make steel here, though, as opposed to making it in China if we make it at a higher standard?
So I'm not, and actually I think the Greens
Why did the farmers get this?
Hang on, let me finish.
Go on.
I think the Greens have been clear, including in the past, that we can, that discussion is, I'm open to it, we're open to it.
So you could subsidise something like Glenbrook?
As if it is towards a cleaner energy plan, and particularly to benefit workers on the ground. I think that, the principles are, who is this benefiting mostly? Are we just sort of throwing cash at a big company who will siphon most of it offshore, the benefits of it? So yeah, those are the principles, and the Greens are always open to that discussion.
Will the Green Party move to ban live animal exports, given obviously the last situation that we've seen?
We called for that over many terms, in fact, but that unfortunate tragedy, which, still feeling, a lot of us.
Why are we still doing it with the amount of money that it brings in? Because you imagine that the marketing of seeing those sort of cows and stuff like that on CNN being beamed around the world, surely that does worse damage for,
I reckon,
for pure New Zealand.
I reckon it does.
Is it another deal breaker? I mean, what I'm getting is that there's a lot of support for these ideas. I'm just wondering how you actually get it done when you're in negotiations with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry to sound like a stuck broke record, but it really is why we need the strongest Green Party vote that we can possibly have, so that we can take that mandate that we know people want us to take in to the negotiation table to form a government.
Chris Hodd's asking, does the Green Party have any inclination to start a conversation about a human population target or a limit in New Zealand, because it would seem to be the most obvious approach to limiting environmental damage and our drain on our natural resources?
Though that is a completely outdated, unproven, classist, racist and sexist approach to making policy, and it would be pretty much the end of the Green Party's political leadership on the issues if we were to go near that conversation. There is enough for people on this planet. We can't afford billionaires, in fact. So starting to point the blame at often communities and families and neighbourhoods around the world who have borne the impact of land grabbing approaches from big powers are the ones who end up the target of those policies, and it's quite frankly has no place.
Tanya Penethel Bermudez asks, what are you most proud of in this term of government? I guess we kind of heard of it before, zero carbon.
Well, I will say again, the strongest action on climate change in 3 decades and 30 years of government, which included the zero carbon historical legislation.
Does zero carbon matter if we keep subsidising everyone that's polluting?
It's part of our way towards a transition. It's, we understand that overnight we are not going to have a full zero carbon transgression. So I think, if people want to see stronger action, if people want to see actual focus on changing the system of high carbon emission and high polluting industries, then it is the Greens who have a transition plan and who will stick up for that approach. Some people
see this as, it looks like a bit of a game though, doesn't it? And that we announce that all these people are going to be paying. For example, another example with the farmers and cleaning up waterways. Do you support $50 million as the Labour Party's announced to clean up waterways for farmers?
And they're also they're doing a lot of that work.
Profit.
They're doing a lot of that work as well. Many farmers are doing a lot, and they've gone to pains to tell me this.
I wonder why other New Zealanders have to pay for to clean up something.
What we're paying for, and whether you agree with who that subsidy goes to help or not. But what we are paying for is long overdue protection work for our rivers for all of us. It benefits all of us to get our rivers back to shape.
Quick fire. Dan LTC,
what?
Crikey, Dan, wants to know if you've ever been a regular, I'm going to call it marijuana smoker.
When I was young, I smoked for a little while, and then I saw what it was.
How long are we talking?
Oh, young? I'm not young right now.
For how long did you?
Maybe in my later year of college, I think. Unfortunately, I also saw the harms, and that ended up putting me off a bit, which was probably fortunate for me.
Are we talking a few months, a year or so?
I reckon for most of that year, 6 months to a year, I reckon I was experimenting and probably enjoying it quite a lot, which is why I am clear that we need to vote yes to reform that legislation, because people like me and the Prime Minister apparently have got away with doing something illegal that people right now are not getting away with, and especially young Māori and Pacific men.
But your voice to people about trying marijuana, do it or not?
Sorry?
Your word to people about, if there's young people watching this and they've had that sort of temptation in front of them to try marijuana, what do you say to them?
Like, it's happening already regardless of what I say, and regardless of the law, and regardless of the fact that it's illegal. it's happening already. That's the reality. It's here now. We want to make it safer, we want to reduce the harm, and we want to rid the justice system of the racism.
Would you tell them not to give it a go, though?
I don't know if that's my role, to be honest.
But people look for you for advice.
Yeah.
You've done it. You're a leader.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I've got children and I've got young adults. What would I say as a mama? People, I would want them to actually make their own decisions. Like, seriously, my children, I'm not going to be watching them all the time. They have to make their own decisions. What I would say is, I hope that everything else in their life is going okay. And that's where people make the better decisions. If they've got good, connected families, communities, warm home, affordable, livable incomes, that's what helps people to have the resilience, if they try things, to be able to pull out if it ends up being not healthy for them.
Would you tell your own kids not to do it?
Probably not. That is their decision. I cannot stop people from living their lives, and that's why we must make this a health approach rather than a criminal one.
Should the Prime Minister just say how she's voting in the referendum? She's in a leadership position, right? She's had all the information in front of her like you have. I
do understand she's in a quite different role from me as Prime Minister. I really understand and have sympathy for. Wait, I'm getting there, I promise.
Sorry.
I do have sympathy for her being in a different role. What I reckon, this is just me personally, is if she truly believes it's a good thing for the country, I think she should feel mandated to be able to say so.
Righto, fair enough. Dylan. I wonder if he's been on the weed. Dylan Davis wants to know if you have a favourite wiggle.
What's a wiggle?
You don't know the Wiggles?
Oh,
your kids will know the Wiggles.
Oh, those Wiggles.
I probably should have made that the plural as opposed to.
Are they the yellow men? Do they wear yellow sweatshirts? Is this what we're talking?
Yeah, I think this is the one we're talking
so
about.
sorry.
To be fair, you've got the children. I haven't got the kids, right? So
it's
probably your fault, not me. Okay, you haven't got a. So the answer is there's no favourite Wiggle. I think we've decided there.
There's votes on this.
Okay, Aaron Allen asks, crikey, what's your favourite vegetable?
Broccoli. Come on. What is that?
Righto. Why?
Okay.
We're going to have to be
right.
on that one. Okay.
It's quite bland. Fair.
Yeah, righto. For your coffee, almond, dairy, soy, or coconut?
I'm hot chocolate all the way.
Okay, but what milk are you using?
Ordinary.
Yeah.
Ordinary milk. And
Righto.
full. Not that trim rubbish.
Yeah.
Right? Just water. If you're not going to have the full milk, just have water.
Are you okay with how dairy farms run?
We've got to move towards, again, more sustainable methods and away from intensive.
What about like bobby calves and stuff like that? And the way that I mean, you know how milk's made, right? Don't we all? This is Aotearoa. We all know how this happens, right?
Yeah.
You okay with that?
I think we've got some good leadership in organic farming and more acceptable practices. We've got that happening already. We don't need to be cruel.
Okay. Let's talk about reforming abortion.
How long
we've got. This is our last one. I promise. I just realised what you noticed. There's a few questions about this, and I know what you're thinking as a guy asking this. So I'm going to let you take it away. But there's people talking about the help that they need for after 20 weeks, for example, and if there would be any reform there, and also these safe zones to prevent protesters and that kind of stuff outside clinics.
It's absolutely essential that everyone should be able to access healthcare without being harassed at all. It's just, that is clear for me. Unfortunately, the reform legislation that we passed didn't include that safe protection. So we would be looking to improve that if we get the chance to get back into government.
The need for the 2 practitioners after 20 weeks, for example, would you look to reduce that at all?
So again, what do you? Because the reform actually allows for the principle is that we trust people to make their own decisions.
Sure.
And can I just say that after 20 weeks. That is a harrowing choice for everyone. That is not something where someone has woken up after 20 weeks and has changed their mind. Never, ever has that been the case. They have instead gone out and bought clothing, set up the cot in the room, organised and prepared for hospital, and then something has gone wrong. And imagine Imagine having to be grieving through this process and be thought of as a criminal. Not cool. And that's why I'm pleased that we have reformed the law.
Okay. The final question.
You said it was going to be.
Final question, I promise. No, this is a good one, actually. I like this one. I don't know where it came from, but is Chloe Swarbrick right? Is politics F ...
I think people would agree. They may not use that language, and I certainly won't in this particular interview.
Thank you, because my boss is somewhere around and she's probably already mad. I already know
Even though no one's watching us, they're all watching James Shaw on the other debate. No, not true.
I don't know
Not
about
true.
that. I don't think so at all. Come on, why wouldn't you stick with the Herald?
Look, so the reason we have so many people not inspired to vote at all, unfortunately, particularly young people, low-income people, is a shame. And it's because for far too long, politicians have been seen to be disconnected, not representative. Oh my goodness gracious.
What about if they look at you though and they think you didn't get enough done? Is that part of it as well?
Some do absolutely, and some others are understanding that one Māori woman, on her own is not going to make massive gains, but it's important that they see their voice and their political lived experience represented, and I'm proud that I've been able to continue to do that.
Given New Zealand First is gone, are you going to be tougher in the negotiations this
time
time
know
round?
that they're gone.
Looking at these numbers, and I should clarify because Mr. Peters will be furious with me for saying that. If we go with these, and I do apologise, Deputy Prime Minister, I do apologise for that. But if it is just you and the Green Party and Labour in a room, will you push tougher this time round?
Oh, so we've had a really good opportunity to reflect on our first term in government in this arrangement, and there's a lot of things we have learnt. One thing is very clear. While we've been able to show that we got stuff done, our political independence is paramount, is key, and that's something that I think our members, our MPs, will want to be really strong about, regardless of the voting results. That's something that we're really clear we need to keep doing.
But you'll be tougher?
I think that's what I'm saying.
There we go. I just needed to double check because I'm a bit simple like that. But anyway, Marama Davidson, kia ora, thank you so much for the extra time. I know. You had a watch too. That's what I'd say. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, and thank you. Really nice to have you in tonight. If you're still there, we do hope so. Bye for now.
Thank you.